Good morning everyone. Myself Dr. Vipin Kumar, Assistant Professor Veterinary Medicine, Bihar Veterinary College, Patna. Today I am going to deliver a lecture on principles of fluid therapy in animals. As you all know, the fluid is the very important part of our body, and it constitute about 60% of our total body mass in adult, and about 70 to 80% in case of young ones, and it varies from even more in young ones depending on the species of animal. Okay, so entire lecture on principles of fluid therapy in animals will be covered under various headings comprising of basics of body fluids and its composition, first one. Second one, water balance in body, how the balance persist or maintained in the body though the constant or continuous excretion or secretions of water is taking place from the body, as well as continuous intake of water is also took place from various routes. And third one is the regulation of body fluids, how the body fluids in the body is regulated and what are the important organs are involved in the regulation of body fluids. And next component would be fluid therapy and its indication, followed by types of fluids, how many types of fluids are available for the therapy in the animal as well as human beings. And next will be what are the routes of administrations. There are several routes through which we can administer fluid in the body. And last one is the fluid overload, what will be the important cardinal signs when fluid overload occurs during the fluid therapy in animals as well as in human beings. Though because we are mainly concerned with animal, so I am focusing on the animal only here. So first we will go for the composition of body in context of body fluids. As you all know, there are two compartments in our body, that is called extracellular compartment and intracellular compartment. And as far as the distribution of body fluid is concerned, so intracellular compartment is the major compartment in which 2/3 of whole body fluids remain present, and in extracellular component or part there is a 1/3 of total body fluids. So main compartment in which body fluids are present is the intracellular component, and rest is in the extracellular component compartment. Again, extracellular compartment has been further divided into three subcompartments, that is interstitial compartment, intravascular compartment and transcellular compartment. So out of 1/3 body fluids present in extracellular compartment, 75% of that will be present in interstitial compartment of extracellular fluid compartment. Okay, and rest one will be in the intravascular space or in transcellular space. Intravascular space mainly composed of blood and lymph fluid. And as you all know, blood is composed of plasma and cells. So about 8% of body weight average is blood in animal's body. It may vary from animal to animal, but average you can say that 8%. Okay, and 5% is the plasma. टोटल बॉडी वेट का 5% क्या है, प्लाज्मा होता है, और रेस्ट सेल्स होते हैं. एंड सेल्स एंड लिम्फेटिक्स, यू कैन ऑल्सो से द लिम्फ will come under the 3%. Okay, and as far as transcellular component is concerned, so lot of secretions will come under this category, such as the cerebrospinal fluid, vials, secretions from glandular tissues, and gastrointestinal secretions. So these are the component of transcellular compartment, which comes under the extracellular fluid. Now come to the balance of body fluids in the body. As you all know, the losses and gain of fluid in the body is the dynamic process. That means some quantity is being taken and some quantity is being excreted out. So there is a dynamic equilibrium between the losses and gain of fluids in the body. So what are the routes of gaining of fluids in the body? So routes of gaining fluid inside the body is the water intake. Major part of fluids is being taken into the body through the drinking of water, followed by the moisture content in food, whatever the animal eats. Okay, followed by through the moisture inhaled along with the environmental oxygen or environmental air, which is inhaled during the breathing cycle. Some moisture is coming through this route also. So these are the important routes through which water is taken inside the body. And what about the excretion? So excretion is taking place through the skin, evaporating mechanism, through urine. The urine is produced in kidney and excreted out through various parts of urinary tract, and lungs through exhalation of air. Some moisture is exhaled out from the body, and through GI tract through defecation. So these are the important routes through which the water is being excreted out from the body, and in this way the body fluid balance remain maintained, and there would be no any kind of disturbances in normal situation. As far as body fluid is concerned, so you might have heard or might have learned, body fluid contains dissolved solids. Dissolved solids, substances that dissolve in solvent, is called solute. You have learnt in your higher secondary classes. And electrolytes, solutes are present in the fluid, usually are electrolytes, which splits into the ions when placed in water. And ions plays very important role in various physiological process of body to maintain the physiological function. And primary ions which are present in fluids are sodium, potassium, chlorine, bicarbonate, and phosphate ion. These are the important ions are present, you can say important minerals present in electrolytes present in the body fluids, and these are in two forms, either in cationic form and either in anionic form. So body water or body fluids act as a solvent for the biological system. So to establish equilibrium, body water moves along its concentration gradient. Concentration gradient, what does it mean? That means it is a regular phenomenon, dynamic process, that is some water is being absorbed or being taken out from the environment or outside and some is being excreted out. So these are the important about the body fluids and constituent of body fluids. And one thing I would like to emphasize here also, there are two components, that is extracellular and intracellular. So ions similarly having similar distribution pattern. Some of the ions are called intracellular ions and some of the ions are called extracellular ions. So major intracellular cations are potassium, calcium, and major extracellular cations are sodium, bicarbonate, etc. So we must remember the extracellular and intercellular ions present in two compartments. Now come to the fluid therapy. How many kinds of fluid therapy are there? This is important one. What we are doing in clinical practice. So there are three important kinds of fluid therapies depending upon need of the body. The first one is called as replacement therapy. That means whatever losses has occurred from the body, that needs to be replaced, that needs to be compensated through this kind of therapy. So replacement therapy is one of the important one in which deficit is being maintained by fluid therapy. Another one is called adjunctive therapy. Adjunctive therapy means if we need to replace the existing fluid from the body by some other fluids, that kind of therapy is called adjunctive therapy. As for example, in case of ascites or edema, we need to remove the fluid from the ascitic region or edematous region. So in these situations, usually we are using the 25% mannitol, and if we use mannitol, it will create the oncotic pressure and it will increase the osmotic gradient in the intravascular space, and in this way once the osmotic gradient will increase the intravascular space, the water will be absorbed from the different parts of the body, especially from the peritoneal cavity in case of ascites and from the subcutaneous region in the edema, and fluid will be replaced and taken out from the peritoneal cavity and subcutaneous region, and ascites and edema will be resolved. So this kind of therapy is called adjunctive therapy. Next one is the supportive therapy. This is kind of therapy in which animal is treated to support some kind of deficiency, some kind of deficient solutes, some kind of deficient biological materials like amino acids, minerals, vitamins and carbohydrate. So this kind of therapy is called supportive therapy. So these are the three important kinds of therapy which we have discussed. Now come to dehydration. As you all know, dehydration is one of the important serious problem in animal as well as human being. Once the animal or human being will suffer from dehydration, there is a need to treat them with the rehydration therapy. Okay. So what are the important factor, what are the important conditions which causes the dehydration? So everyone you might be knowing, might Diarrhea is one of the most important condition in which dehydration occurs. Diarrhea, vomition, and some of the diuresis in case of excessive blood glucose level in the body, or diabetes, diabetes, ketoacidosis, uh, acid indigestion, alkaline indigestion, volvulus impaction. In this situation, in this kind of situation, there will be dehydration. So dehydration, and if the animal is suffering from dehydration, you can diagnose it with the help of decreased skin tinting, sunken eyes, depressed mentation, that means animal will be in depressed state, tacky and dry mucous membrane, and increased CRT, capillary refill time will increase from the normal. It will be 2 to 3 seconds in mild case and more than 3 seconds in severe cases. Slight depression of eyes into the eye socket. So these are the important findings you will observe in case of dehydration. And as far as diagnosis is concerned, so dehydration can be diagnosed by physical examination, as I told you earlier, that is by a skin tinting test. You can pick a skin by our pinch, and it will persist for longer period, then it is suggestive for the animal is suffering from the dehydration. Weight loss is another important factor, and some of the laboratory parameter which is supposed to be the confirmatory in nature, that is called PCB and total protein estimation, blood urea nitrogen and creatinine, and pre-renal azotemia. So most important among these are the total protein and the PCB measurement. There will be increase in packed cell volume and total protein. It is confirmatory in nature, and it is depend upon the severity of dehydration. So these are the important things which will be covered under the diagnosis of dehydration. And degree of dehydration can be assessed by the different parameter that this is very difficult to explain here, and you may go for the different kind of treatment or different material or literature available on the internet or standard textbook. Now come to the types of fluid, which is very important. What are the types of fluid required for the treatment of animals or infusion in animals in different conditions? So this is very important. This should be kept in mind. So roughly it has been divided into two categories. All fluids have been divided into two categories. First one is called crystalloids. Second one is the colloids. Name itself is explanatory in nature. Crystalloids are the osmotically active ingredient of the body fluids. That means it is important and it is necessary for the maintaining the normal oncotic pressure inside the intravascular space or in blood vessels or lymphatics. If there will be alteration or changes in the osmotic gradient or oncotic pressure inside the intravascular space, the fluids started moving out or in the intravascular space. So body needs to maintain the normal oncotic pressure, which is about 300 millimeter of Hg, and if it will decrease, there will be withdrawal of fluid from the other part of the body into the intravascular space, and it will put pressure on the intravascular space, and in this way there will be pulmonary edema, and there will be hypertension and load on the cardiac muscle or cardiac chamber. So these things needs to be considered, and if there will we increase in decrease in oncotic gradient or osmotic pressure, what will happen? The fluid from the intravascular component will come out and there would be hypovolemia, and hypovolemia will lead to the less supply of blood to the different parts of the body, vital organ, and ultimately anoxia will develop, and anoxia will lead to the development of anaerobic metabolism, and anaerobic metabolism lead to less energy development and other metabolic consequences which causes severe metabolic disorders. So, these are the important things you need to keep in mind. And it is crystalloids are used for volume expansion. Whenever needed, volume is to be increased, we need to infuse the crystalloids, and correction of electrolyte abnormality. This is important. If there is a deficiency of electrolytes, then crystalloids has to be given. And types of crystalloids. So, there are different kinds of crystalloids: isotonic, hypertonic, or hypotonic crystalloids. So, most important among them is the isotonic crystalloid is the sodium chloride solution, or you can say that the normal saline. Normal saline means 0.09% sodium chloride. So, this is required in the condition where there is a hyperkalemia, hypercalcemia. In those circumstances, normal saline is to be given. Next one is the, and this is important, when there is a deficiency or deficit in interstitial or intracellular component, because once we infuse the normal saline in the intravascular space, only 25% will remain in intravascular space and 75% will be absorbed to the different compartment, that means interstitial or intracellular component of the body, a compartment of the body. So, this is very important, you need to keep in mind that 25% will remain in intravascular, 75% will be absorbed. Okay. Now, hypertonic salines, if the concentration of sodium chloride will increase from 0.9, the solution will called as a hypertonic. And if we mix 0.9% sodium chloride with 5% dextrose, it will 10%, sorry, 5% rather than 10%, then it will become hypertonic. And hypotonic as well, if the concentration of sodium chloride solution is less than 0.9%, the solution is called as hypotonic solution. Less than 10%, when we use the hypotonic solution, only 10% will remain, even less than 10% will remain in the intravascular space, and rest will go to the other compartment of the body. So, this is very important for that. If we need to increase the fluid level immediately in the interstitial or extracellular fluid, then space, then it will we need to have the hypotonic solution. Lactate ringer solution, that means it contains the potassium, sodium, calcium and other minerals along with the sodium lactate, which is needed for in the treatment of acidosis, metabolic acidosis, because lactate will be converted into bicarbonate ion in the liver and it will neutralize the acidosis or acid present in the blood or plasma, and in this way we can use this particular solution or Ringer's lactate solution in case of metabolic acidosis. So, this is very important. Next one is the Ringer's solution. Ringer's solution is the same thing, but it is devoid of sodium lactate, and other parameter, other constituents will be same as the Ringer's lactate solution. So, it can be used in case of hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, hypophosphatemia. In this, wherever there is a hypo, that means there is a deficiency of electrolytes or ions, then only we can give the Ringer's solution, because it will maintain the normal situation or it will increase the deficit of electrolytes in the system. So, now come to the colloid. There are two kinds of colloid. One is natural colloid and another one is the synthetic colloid. Natural colloids are blood products, whole blood, plasma, platelet-rich plasma, packed RBC. These are the natural colloid. Colloid are used wherever there is need of immediate expansion of intravascular fluid, because molecular weight of colloid is much more than the, and size of its molecule is much more than the pore size of intravascular space, intravascular part, because it has larger size, it will not be absorbed through the pore in the vessels to the different compartment of the body. It will remain in the intravascular, and once the intravascular part will be rich in colloid, it will increase the oncotic pressure, and once the oncotic pressure increase, it produces higher osmotic gradient, and fluids from the other component, other compartment will be attracted in the intravascular part, and there would be sudden increase in the volume. So it will be used in case of shock. And preparations such as albumin, dextran, hemacil, heta starch comes under this category, that means colloid or blood component. Synthetic colloids, dextrans and heta starch, these are the synthetic colloids, when quantity, and it is directly proportional to the size. When the size of the molecule will be more, it will remain present for longer period of time in intravascular space. So this is very important. Now come to the route of administration. So what are the routes of administration of fluids? The most important routes are the intravenous route, subcutaneous route, intraperitoneal route, intraosseous route, oral route, and rectal route. These are the routes through which we can infuse the fluids for rehydration therapy. So every route has some advantage and some disadvantage. This is very lengthy, and you can go through the textbook for detail about this, to know detail about this, because it will be very difficult for me to explain all those things here. So it is advised to go for the study in detail about this. Okay, and how much fluid is required, this is very important, and how we can calculate the quantity of fluid that has to be given for the treatment. So this is a simple method. Simply you need to assess the percentage of dehydration. If the dehydration is 10% and body weight is 100 kg, that means the requirement is 1000 milliliter. That means 1 liter of 1 liter of fluid is required for that. Okay, 8%, 10%. That means if the body weight is accordingly, you can titrate the body requirement of the fluid. And one of the important factor behind the infusion is the determination of drops per minute or drops per second or drops per hour fluid. So this is very important aspects, and infusion pumps comes in the market in different drops. You can say that the regular drip sets and having 10, 15 or 20 drops per ml is available in market, and it is used in small animals, and for large animals we need to have even lesser drops, 5 drops per ml is required, because we need to infuse the fluid in aggressive manner in large animal than the small animal. And for very small animal, we need to have a drip set which deliver the fluid at a rate of 60 drops per ml. So this kind of drip sets is available in market, and according to need you can purchase the drip set and you can manipulate the rate of infusion and calculate drops per minute. If you don't have any information on that, you can calculate it with the help of a simple mathematical formula. If divide drops per hour by 60 minutes per hour to get drops per minute, accordingly divide by 60, you will get the drop per second. So if 1000 drops per hour is divided by 60, then you will get the drop per minute, and such as 1000 divided by 60, it will come to 16.7, and when 16.7 will be divided by 60, there would be 0.28 drop per second. So this can be calculated as per your need. And now come to principles of rehydration. Rehydration means if a person or animal is suffering from dehydration, the therapy instituted is called rehydration therapy. So correct rehydration, then electrolyte and acid abnormalities, and don't attempt to replace chronic fluid losses at once, because it will produces vasodilation and animal may go into the shock. Severe dilution of plasma, proteins, blood cells and electrolyte may result with further causes problem in the animal, because hemodilation will lead to the less supply of oxygen to the different parts of body and even nutrients to the different parts. So aim for 80% dehydration within 24 hours. Not more than 80% is recommended. And while infusing fluids in the body, it is mandatory to monitor the pulmonary and cardiac functions. And now come to the fluid overload. Fluid overload is also important aspects, because once the fluid overload occur, that means excessive fluid infusion occurs, it may lead to the death of the animal. So it is always advisable to monitor the fluid overload, and by observing some of the important parameter, you can say that this is animal is going to fluid overload. So those observations are serous nasal discharge. Once the fluid overdose will occur, there would be serous nasal discharge. Increased respiratory rate, that means hyperpnea, crackles and muffled sounds from the lungs. Latest, there would be the pulmonary edema, pleural effusion, decreased PCV and increased blood pressure. So these are the important aspects or principles of fluid therapy in animal, and by these words I think I have completed almost all aspects of fluid therapy in animals, and this is very important and life-saving approach or treatment protocol, which is done in emergency situation, and one should have better understanding of using what kind of fluids is required in which and condition wise. So this is all about the fluid therapy. Thank you.